Good day. In this video, I'm going to explain to you why the STAR format is the absolute best format to answer interview questions. Okay, and the number one reason why this is the case is because people prefer familiar approaches. Okay, interviewers prefer familiar approaches, that is, hearing answers in a format that they can easily recognize. You make their life easier, so to speak. Right? STAR format is the most common by far. Interviewers are trained, on this specific format, and since it's a familiarity thing, this is why it's always recommended. Okay. The second reason why the STAR format makes a ton of sense to most candidates is because you can extend it. There's variations, alterations of this format that still make sense, such as mixing the situation and task. Okay, mixing the situation and task is not something that only, some interview advice services are recommending, but rather employers use this as well. Okay, so if you want this document to follow up and challenge questions specific on the STAR format, notice how the situation and task are combined, right? There's also, an introduction you may want to use in your STAR format, especially if you want to link an open-ended question with a behavioral answer. For example, how do you lead? You cannot say, hey, let me tell you about the time when I led. You would start with an introduction, so you make your answer to make a little more sense, but at the end of the day, you would still go with your STAR answer, right? Then you would also want to seriously consider making the task to look more of a challenge or an obstacle, to dramatize a little bit your STAR answer in a bit to make your answers a little bit more engaging and more interesting, right, in these job interviews. Now, this isn't to say that you should take all these variations literally and to automatically try to extend it as much as possible. A notable example being the learnings. So yes, it's good advice that you add sometimes a bit of learning in your answers. After the result, you would talk about some learnings, but it's not always that you should employ this approach. Okay, failure questions would be 50% learnings. At least this is what I recommend, right? So as you can see, various options with this STAR format. Now, there's also a risk with these STAR answers, and basically the risk that this implies is because, as with any template, when you template something, it will no longer sound as interesting, right? So by over templating your answers in the STAR format, you risk having your answers flat, to sound a bit flat and not interesting, And the absolute best way to prevent this, or to diagnose whether your answers sound flat or fishy or sound dubious, is to role play them. Okay, so that's why role play will be an extra step to ensure that your STAR answers will sound good. Okay, now another reason why the STAR format makes a ton of sense is because there's various other formats that were used primarily for commercial purposes, such as the DIGS format, DIGS. I think it's from Louis Lin, if I'm not mistaken. These formats would basically be on the more dramatic side, to make your stories more compelling. But the challenge with these approaches is that it's not usable in all your answers. So it's rather for a niche type of scenario, right? So the reason why these don't work well is because they're primarily built for commercial services to sell yourself a framework, right? For example, I could sell you the DAN format to answer interview questions, the description, action, and nuggets, right? I would package it as an interview prep service, and basically you would fall into this. You would go on this sales funnel, so to speak, right? Now, last but certainly not least, is it really the best way to answer interview questions using STAR format. And you'll probably have noticed, some of you, a nuance in the title of this video and throughout this explanation, that said that the STAR is the best format, the best template you may use in job interviews, but it's not the absolute best way to answer interview questions. And it's never been the case. The absolute best way to answer interview questions is your own format, is no format. It's, emphasizing on your strength, emphasizing on the points that you find the most interesting, your interviewer to remember from your stories. The challenge with this approach is that if you employ an approach of choosing your own format to answer interview questions, you will be susceptible to a number of challenges, such as rambling, or you forget to use some metrics in a highly data-driven role, or you will use some impressionism techniques such as storytelling to impress the interviewer, but not for the right reasons. Right? But long story short, I've had success with candidates, primarily for director level roles and senior managers, to be honest with you, who they never felt like the STAR format was there specifically to their advantage, and they always went above and beyond to communicate their ideas in the most compelling possible way to sell themselves in these job interviews. I actually made a video about this as of recently, if you would like to learn more about that. Okay, so I hope you found this useful, and thank you very much for watching.